The Lamborghini Huracan STO. I understand that most people on the planet will never be able to afford this car, let alone drive it. In fact, it's worth 4 times more than my childhood home. So why make a video on something like this that's unobtainium? Well, the reality is there's certain things about cars like this that are interesting compared to a normal car on the road. When you have a team of dedicated engineers that can focus all their resources and budget on one singular task, something that is a very focused car, there's a lot of things that can be pushed forward. It can be a much more exciting and special car. And that's what we're going to attempt to show in this video, along with why you would separate your bank account from all of this money to buy this. Let's talk briefly about the interior and exterior. And when you look at the outside, what you're going to notice immediately is it's a rolling piece of art, an automotive piece of art. And you may not appreciate the exterior styling. It's very shouty, namely in this orange, but the longer you spend time looking at each panel, you'll see the level of perfection and what they tried to do. Every single piece seems to have a relevant meaning and style to it, no matter how you look at it, from above, below, or the side. We're going to get into the engineering part of each panel in terms of aerodynamics in the shop, but on the inside, you're going to look at this, and the goal of the STO was to be that somewhat race car feeling vehicle for the street. They wanted to make this the hardest edge car, so they strip a lot of weight out of it, so even the door panels are all carbon. The floor pan is carbon. A lot of the vent work and all the miscellaneous pieces are carbon fiber. The door handles are fabric. The grab handle to pull on the door to open it is a fabric piece. It's things we've seen in other racy sports cars before, but it's well executed here and it feels very purposeful. You have these carbon buckets, and if you're someone with a large unit up front, you may not be comfortable. Again, it's sports car stuff that you have to sit in to figure it out. Everything else is covered in Alcantara in here, and of course you can spec this out however you want in terms of color, fabric choice. It's really up to you, but the main thing you're going to pull away from this car is it's completely focused. The entire dashboard is low glare. You have a very low roofline, which aids in its appearance on the outside. It's very Lamborghini, but on the inside it seems like a very comfortable cabin, despite the fact that there's literally no storage in here. You're not buying this to be a RAV4. You're buying this to experience something that most cars can't provide. Do you hear that? What? What's that sound? It's the running of the bulls, Mark. My Tesla doesn't sound like this. No, it definitely does not. This thing is geared amazingly. They're super tight together for no other reason other than you want to hear this V10. I love the gear ratios. It's hilarious. Steering is unbelievably fast. I mean, that's probably your only real problem with this car, right? Yeah, if I let's get over the complaints first. The steering is there's no weight to it. There's no load up. It's so light. It reminds me of your Z06 Corvette. I know I'm not going to talk about that car because I know your pants will get tight. But the steering reminds me a lot of that. Super quick. Just not a lot of feedback front to rear, but it makes it really easy to flick it in the corners.
It's a fixed ratio too. So while there isn't the most feel by, let's call it supercar standards, it is very direct.
Oh, it's super easy to drive fast. I mean, that's what's crazy about it. The brakes are unbelievable. Like,
the dynamics of this car, dude, it's edgy.
it is. So this is what I picture a modern supercar. Like you said, hey, I want a Lamborghini that's rear-wheel drive. This thing wants to rotate everywhere, but without being dangerous. It's easy to drive fast. I was starting to say about the brakes. You have brake dunks to every single corner, real ones, so you never worry about brake fade. I mean, it's like you can ramrod this thing, you can be rough with it, and it still does what you want it to do. And listen to it, Jack.
The rear steer as well, Mark, does a great job getting with initial turn-in. You combine that with the fast steering, my God, dude.
Yeah, no, it's a nutty car. It lives up to the way that it looks. It's a driver's car. You can have a lot of fun with this thing. And I want to hear it. Let me hear it.
Almost 140 into a braking zone, Mark. Oh, yeah! So, Mark, is there anything else you want to talk about when it comes to the STO?
No, let's just hear it. Now, hopefully, you have a better idea of what a car like this brings to the table. Whether you are an automotive enthusiast or not, it's about the sights, the sounds, and then if you're lucky enough to be riding shotgun with an absolute monkey behind the wheel, there's nothing else like it. So let's get into it, Jack. Tell me about what's underneath the skin.
Well, Mark, what is underneath the skin of this vehicle causes pure animalistic joy for me. This is the Huracan STO. This is one of 3 send-off models for the Huracan line, and more importantly, the naturally aspirated Lamborghini V10. That is going away for the future drivetrains, which are going to be hybridized and all that other fun stuff. This, the Technica, and the Cerato are the 3 special edition Huracans that are closing out this line. Before we talk about the engineering that goes into the STO and what this product is supposed to be, I think it's very important we hear directly from the CTO of Lamborghini.
Since I was a child, I was really always in love with cars. And to be honest, my whole life is, let me say, turning around cars. My private life is turning around cars. I'm reading magazines, I'm looking cars, I'm collecting cars, I make motorsports, I'm modifying cars. So everything is more or less somehow related to cars. If I go in holiday, I mean, my girlfriend is always complaining. I'm looking which kind of racetrack is nearby, which museum I can visit, which cars and coffee we can join. So, I mean, therefore, to work for Lamborghini is for sure an outstanding thing, especially in this role. I mean, in combination with the size of the company, you can influence a lot the product itself, and this is something that is, for someone that is in love with cars, is for sure one of the best jobs in the world that you can have.
What was the STO supposed to accomplish for your brand? Was it that, like, hey, we can build a true driver's track car like a GT3 RS? Or what was the mission, like, when you when the teams came up with the STO, what was sort of the purpose?
I mean, on this, to be honest, I can even explain this from our own experience, because when the concept of the STO was launched, it was exactly at the end of my first period of in Lambo. So I can exactly tell you what was the idea behind. But also on this, I would like to have one step before the STO was launched, because I mean, the brand of Lamborghini from the technical side did in the last 8 to 10 years, a kind of refocusing, because before, for sure, Lambo was, let me say, high performance on the straight line, high top speed, these kind of things. And then step by step, the brand was orienting, we were, let me say, focusing more on the driving experience. But the first step in this direction was definitely the Huracan Evo. And the Evo was also the first car where we incorporated in our competence field this kind of vehicle control units, the strategy, to have really to understand how you incorporate all the active systems in the car, the rear wheel steering, the dampers, at this time, the torque vectoring by brakes, how you make a cool, let me say, a strategy that gives the car still a natural feeling. And technically wise, it's a difference between a kind of forecast-oriented strategy or feedback-oriented strategy. In the Evo, we did the first time the forecast-oriented. And then based on this, step by step, we improved. And the STO, for sure, coming back to your original question, the mission of the STO was exactly what you already told. So the focus is, for sure, track-oriented, for sure, fast to drive, but fun to drive also. So the mission, and sometimes as an engineer, you have to define a kind of direction. If you want to go in the last 10th of lap time, then you lose probably a little bit fun to drive, because, for instance, to give you an example, you have to make the car a little bit stiffer, and therefore you improve a little bit the limit, the tire development. You have to be a little bit, let me say, reducing the temperature window where the tire is working. Then you can probably achieve even a little bit better lap time, but you sacrifice also on the same time the driving fun. And for us, in every segment, we want to have the best offer for the customer regarding this driving experience, so the most thrilling experience. In the case of the STO, it's for sure combined with a very good lap time level, a very good, also this is also important for us, drivability, because we are not building cars only for the race drivers, because there is a difference. If you want, for instance, we make always R&D internally benchmark test drives. We invite our race drivers, we invite our development drivers for sure, guys like me that are, let me say, have okay driving skills, but are not a race driver. And also, let me say, even people with less driving skills. We are measuring the lap time, and always the race drivers are saying, we need more stiffness, we need more body control, and so on. But if you make a setup like this, the race driver is happy, but 90% of the other people are not happy. And this is not our philosophy. Our philosophy is to have driving fun for the majority of our customers. Because at the end of the day, if we build a race car, we make the car for the race drivers. If we build a street car, we have to ensure that the majority of our customers can enjoy the car and can have fun with the car. And this was exactly the positioning of the STO.
So this car, Mark, wasn't developed purely for lap times. While it is nearly race car fast, to Reuven's point, this is a vehicle that's about emotion. When you drive this car, it's not a car that's an actual race car, right? You're not going to win an award at the end of a track day. You're going out for an experience, and this experience has to be worth $400,000. And the experience they're chasing is some of the technology and the feel of a Super Trofeo one-make race car, the Huracan one-make race series, or the GT3. But they're taking that feel and that character and translating into a vehicle. While you can set a fast lap time on a track day, you can also drive it on your favorite road. From a body structure perspective and a chassis and aero perspective, let's talk about what they did. So they took a regular Huracan and threw 75% away of all of the body panels and now made it carbon fiber. So the whole front clip is new. It's now called a Cofango. They've blended the hood and the fenders into one carbon fiber piece. that is now very, very aero functional. You have ducts on the hood itself to help feed the radiator better. You have brake ducts. You have a giant front splitter, which helps balance out the rear aerodynamics of this car. When you look at the rear clip of this car, again, it's all carbon fiber. They took some of their aerospace technology. They lightened up the carbon fiber, made it even thinner. So now it's 25% thinner, and it leads to a total weight reduction versus the Performante of nearly 100 pounds. The rear aero treatments, you have the shark fin, which is that centerpiece, which is supposed to help aero stabilize this car in yaw moments. You have the snorkel in the back, which is supposed to help cool the rear engine, and then you have an adjustable wing. The rear wing has 3 adjustment points, which can help shift the weight balance of the car by nearly 13%. So if you want to add more aero to the rear of the car, you add more understeer to the front. When you reduce it, it gets a little bit more oversteery. The total aero number or downforce number for this car at 174 miles an hour is over 900 pounds of downforce, which before the GT3 RS came out made this the most aero-capable vehicle in its class. So this is on the same shared architecture as the Audi R8, that's well known. This architecture was introduced in 2014. It is an old platform, but as Reuven is about to explain to you, one of the joys of having architecture around for a long time is you can take that iterative design approach. You can make all the electromechanical subsystems far more sophisticated or more intelligent.
I mean, for sure, there is always a permanent evolution of the process. I mean, you learn permanently based. This is, to be honest, part of every developer's job. So you learn always based on the experience of the previous project. Therefore, you have a continuous. I call it continuous optimization process. This is clear, and especially if you speak about that, we say even in the future, it's getting more important. To be honest, today. The people, if they speak about the car, they always come, even today, about from the component perspective. So they say, you come from the rear wheel steering, and now you add this, now you add that. The major difference in today, even today, but in the future even more, is the electronic architecture and the integration of all the systems. And on this, to be honest, the development process, I'm pretty sure of all the companies in the automotive sector have changed in the past 5 years dramatically, and will even change more. Because you cannot, in the past, I formulate it a little bit more provocative than it was reality. But in the past, it was possible that every single department, component oriented, so the chassis guys, the bodywork guys, the engine guys, gearbox guys, they did more or less their development job. They have some synchronization points. At the end of the day, you put the components on the synchronization points together. You make a little bit calibration, and the car was run. Today, it's not working like this anymore because the electronic network and the interaction between all the components is getting so complex, but complexity means also a lot of opportunities, that you have to do it in a kind of more systems engineering oriented way, means more an integrated way. So today you think more coming from the function and the attribute point of view than really from the component perspective. And this is a change. I would say this is one of the most relevant changes regarding the working model in each R&D center of every automotive company.
So this is a rear-wheel drive car. They've deleted the front axles essentially altogether. Now they just steer. They've gone to a fixed ratio steering rack versus their variables in the past. They've calibrated their very fast 13:1 ratio steering with their 2 rear steer modules. It looks very similar to what you see like on a Porsche. You have 1 rear steer motor for one wheel and 1 for the other. In combination, this helps get the car in and out of corners very, very well. It is double wishbone front and rear. It is non-height adjustable, unlike a GT3, but it does have a front end lift kit. It does have alignment capabilities, but it uses shims instead of bolts or cams. The other thing to bring up is the actual track of this car. The wheels themselves are made of magnesium. They are center lock. Here's a video of the technician who came out to help us with this video, try to get them on. They're like 400 foot-pounds of torque. They are very beefy, and Lamborghini worked directly with Bridgestone to help develop 2 separate tire compounds. The Potenza race tire is what's on this vehicle. It is Bridgestone's approach to something like a Cup 2R, but it's, in my opinion, far more forgiving. It has the breakaway characteristics, more of a regular street tire. It doesn't have the fall off of a slick, but it does give you most of the mechanical grip of a tire like that. And they've held up very well, particularly given the fact that this is not the lightest car that ever existed. It's at 3,400 pounds, which is not that light. When it comes to suspension tuning, it still has BWI MR dampers or MagneRide dampers. It's Lamborghini's 2.0 generation. The hardware, the springs and the shocks are identical to other Huracans, but they've been tuned specifically to the STO. It has sway bars for the STO that are supposed to give it that more oversteer characteristic, and it has stiffer bushings throughout the suspension of this car.
The other thing is that, we've talked to other sports car manufacturers where some brands have to completely reiterate and clean sheet a car. And they haven't had to do this here. They've been working with this for a long time, and one of the benefits of doing that is technology has improved. So a lot of that technology has made its way into this, which improved the electromechanical systems. Processing power has improved. The rear steer modules are faster than they used to be, and they've been able to play with that and play with it in a way that feels far more organic. And that's something that is problematic with many car brands that try to throw all this tech in there, and it starts to remove the driver out of the driving experience, where it starts to fall into the background. And some of the better sports cars of this generation do that, where you can just get connected with the car, absorbed in the experience. And most of the systems do that. It's not perfect, but I feel like they got the absolute most they could out of this car, where you still get out of it and you're like, I did something.
Yeah, this has their LDVI system, which is sort of their predictive algorithm, and allows the steering, the traction control, the torque vectoring by brake, the yaw sensors to all work together to lead to a more cohesive driving experience. You combine that as well with brakes. These are actually hydraulic brakes, which by today's standards is crazy. Everything's moving to brake-by-wire, but you have real feel through the brake pedal. This uses Brembo's latest iteration of their carbon ceramic material. This is called CCMR. It essentially takes technology from Formula One. What does that mean? Well, it's 4 times more thermally conductive than their prior generation carbon ceramics. It's 60% more durable, and it leads to better stopping as well. The other thing that I think helps this car's organic feeling is a traditional mechanical limited slip differential. It's not an E-diff. It has obviously been programmed or been designed to work with the entire vehicle, but it doesn't have a brain of its own.
Right, it's self-locking, right? It's detecting wheel slip and just mechanically locking when it needs to. And that's part of why this car feels more special to drive. They've added the assistance systems where they need to, and they've removed it where they didn't need it. So if you are a really adept driver, or you want to be a complete idiot like Jack, turning everything off and just pitching it sideways, basically trying to upset the car on purpose,
as much as possible.
It's natural. If you have a car like this with this price tag, and you have other cars you take to the track and you're worried about taking this to the track, it's also because the assistance systems are there, you can lean on those, and they help to keep the car on its intended path. And I drove with it on, and it would never felt like it was going to get away from you. You could still go pretty much flat out, and it's there to help you. So it does do the dual purpose thing better than I thought it was going to do. But where I was quite surprised is just how raw this car was to drive at the limit as well, with everything off.
And there's a layer of confidence in this vehicle as well. I know there's lots of jokes about Italian reliability, but at least with our time on the track, the cooling system in this car, while it's largely a carryover from the regular Huracan, their approach to cooling with all their ductwork worked extraordinarily well. It always ran within the normal temperature range, and there is real brake ducts on this vehicle. There aren't just little plastic pieces. This is the only street car I think I've ever seen with actual brake tubes to cool the actual surfaces of the brakes.
And I think that's where you go over the finer details of this car. When you look at the skin of it, the underneath of it, everything has really been well thought out and sorted out. Is that street car that you can really, really connect with on the track. You have a dry sump system, the oiling system works well, you have a dipstick for the engine, you have brake ducts, you have all the proper cooling for this. You have an algorithmic brake temperature warning system that kind of predicts where you could potentially overheat the brakes. And if you're somebody that could do that, I'd like to meet you. But again, it's smart implementations without overcomplicating things. And I think this is much like the 992 GT3. We said that's like the best of the last generation of these cars before everything gets hybridized and all that. This finds a perfect blend along with having that V10.
So let's talk about the V10. Yes, it's port and direct injected. It's a dry sump, as Mark talked about. It's been around for 1 million years. The technology is even older than that, and it makes 640 horsepower in this configuration. It's been retuned and recalibrated specifically for the STO. There's a level of rawness to the Huracan STO that I've not felt in any car other than maybe a GT3, but this has the raw speed that even exceeds something like the Z06. On the back straight, with my monkey ass driving this car, I was like 7 to 8 miles an hour faster than Britt Casey's flying like lap record time in a Z06 that was prepped. That car hit 135, 136. This was hitting over 142. This is a ridiculously fast car in a straight line. The gearbox in this car as well also lends to the emotion. It's a 7-speed dual clutch. Yes, they've changed and improved the algorithms throughout the years. It's still old technology, but it feels emotional. It's violent when it needs to be, it's clunky when it needs to be, and then it's very smooth and refined when you're just putting this thing around.
Yeah, and that's the big takeaway for me personally. I didn't know what to expect coming into this because I never had a Lamborghini poster on my wall, right?
Nor did I.
It's not the Lamborghini that I associated with when I was a kid. This is a far different car, and I think the big thing here is your Z06 behind this car chasing it really wasn't that much slower. And you're going to have the bench argument of like, well, look how much cheaper it is. But the thing is this car's so focused, and that's the big takeaway. It's so focused on delivering that emotional experience. When I get out of the Z06, because they had to isolate so many different things from the driver to make it...
More things to more people.
Yes. To make it that car that you drive on the street and it's like, oh, I don't even know I'm in a supercar. You get in this and you know you're in a supercar. The minute you start it, the minute you set on foot on track, and as I was driving it, it's one of those few cars that when you step out of it and you look back on it and you feel the feels of what it was like to hear it, to feel it, to brake, all of that, it's like a drug coursing through your veins. And you may ask, is it worth that $400,000 to feel that feeling? And I would say there's not too many cars that even get to that level to allow you to feel that anymore. And that's why you would pay this money if you had it. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you are, most of this is captured when you are really exploiting what this car is. It turns in everything else when you're on the street, even though it's a good street car too. It's best felt when you're really pushing it to the ragged edge and hearing that engine just mesmerizing you.
So the most important thing is that we still continue loving cars. And I can tell you, no one should fear that the car culture or the car passion will die. I'm 100% convinced it will not happen.